So we're actually at Tourmaline Beach, which is a world-class surf break here in San Diego and actually throughout California. And we're walking up a stormwater conveyance channel.
Matt O'Malley is chief executive of San Diego Coastkeeper, a nonprofit that advocates for clean water. This storm drain we're walking up looks kind of like a half pipe with vegetation creeping down from the sides. It empties right out onto the beach.
That sort of starts upstream, collects a lot of the runoff throughout the region and in both Tourmaline area and PB and upstream, and sort of channels all that down into the, oh, there's a dead rat, down into the down into the water here.
The storm drain here is not very clean. We step over garbage, algae, a trickle of water O'Malley calls urban drool, and at the very end we reach a big concrete pipe.
Goes pretty far.
It's wild.
A recent report from the city auditor's office found big shortcomings in the way the city funds and maintains this kind of infrastructure. Failing pipes have led to flooding, sinkholes, property damage, and lawsuits. The report says at the current pace, it would take the city 95 years to replace all of its failing stormwater pipes. O'Malley feels vindicated by the report.
It recognized that the city had done very little the last 20 years, both to educate the public about the lack of funding for stormwater infrastructure and to actually do something about it. I mean, it's been recognized that there are pretty strict Stormwater and Clean Water Act requirements. The city has failed to live up to those obligations, but not only that, they failed to try and do anything about making up the significant funding gaps in the hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
Our mission is really twofold. First is to reduce the risk of flooding for our residents off our streets and properties. And then second is to protect and improve water quality in our local waterways and at our beaches.
Drew Kleiss is the deputy director of the city's stormwater division. He says the audit acknowledges a lot of the efficiencies and cost savings the city has undertaken to more quickly repair its failing stormwater infrastructure.
Overall, we're very pleased with the audit and its findings, largely because the findings are just a continuation of a lot of strategies and program improvements that we've already put in place.
That's partly true, but the audit also found that city leaders have known for decades about the lack of funding for stormwater infrastructure and have taken no action to address it. The city is short more than $450 million, just over the next 5 years. Ultimately, it may have to ask voters for a tax or fee increase. But under the city's proposed timeline, its long-term funding strategy won't be ready in time for the next elections in 2020. Kleiss explains why.
I think the most important point is that the picture on what our funding needs will be is likely to evolve, and it will change, and hopefully downward, in a downward direction.
The city is currently negotiating with water quality regulators, hoping for more time to comply with the law. That could make its obligations a little cheaper. O'Malley says the city has waited long enough, but he doesn't blame city staff for the Stormwater Division's shortcomings. He says ultimately, elected officials are the ones who are failing to lead.
If stormwater is a hidden infrastructure project, it's not very sexy, right? You have housing, you have transit. Those are things that are forefront and center. But no one has really stepped up to be the champion for stormwater and for clean water in our region, to recognize that there is this gap and step up for it. So what we're working to do is identify that leader and really work with that person to come up with measures to fund stormwater.
One thing city staff have agreed to implement: a public outreach campaign, educating residents about the need for more money for stormwater. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.